What if everything you hold dear, your job, your relationships, your health, suddenly vanished? Would you still find happiness? Most people wouldn't. They believe happiness comes from success, comfort, and ease. But what if I told you true happiness is found in the fire, not in the light? Life is unpredictable. It will test you, break you, take away what you love. And if your happiness depends on things you cannot control, you will always be at the mercy of fate. But there's another way, a way that no storm can shake, no hardship can steal. The Stoics knew this. They didn't wait for life to be easy. They mastered the art of thriving even in the darkest moments. Today, I'm going to share 7 Stoic principles that will reshape how you see happiness. Principles that will fortify your mind, strengthen your resilience, and give you the power to stand unshaken, no matter what life throws at you. If you're ready to transform the way you think about happiness forever, listen carefully, because what you're about to hear might change your life. Let's begin. 1. Accepting hardship as the impermanence of life. There was a time in my life when I thought suffering was something that happened to other people, unlucky people, unprepared people. I believed that if I worked hard enough, planned carefully enough, and made all the right choices, I could outrun pain. That illusion shattered the day I lost everything. It wasn't sudden, like a crash. It was slow, like watching cracks spread through the walls of a house, knowing that one day they would give way. I had built a life I was proud of, surrounded by people I trusted, a future I thought was certain. Then, piece by piece, it fell apart. A job that once felt secure vanished overnight. A relationship I thought would last crumbled under the weight of unspoken words. And for the first time, I felt completely powerless. At first, I believed this was an injustice, that life had singled me out for suffering while others went on, untouched by hardship. But as I looked around, I began to see something I had been blind to before. Everyone, every single person I knew, had faced their own storms. A close friend had just lost a parent. Another was struggling to rebuild his life after a failed business. Someone else was quietly battling an illness they rarely spoke about. Hardship wasn't personal. It wasn't unfair. It wasn't a punishment. It was simply life. For so long, I had assumed that happiness meant avoiding pain. But that was never the truth. Life doesn't spare anyone. It doesn't care how careful you are, how much you plan, how much you believe you deserve peace. It will take, it will change, it will leave you standing in the ruins of what once was. The mistake is believing that this shouldn't happen, that suffering is an error in the system instead of a fundamental part of it. Epictetus once said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them." Enchiridion, chapter 5. I had always seen hardship as something unnatural, something that needed to be resisted. But what if suffering wasn't a mistake? What if it was just the nature of existence, like the tides that rise and fall, the seasons that shift without warning? I began to think about nature. A tree does not resist the wind. It bends. A river does not stop flowing when rocks appear in its path. It moves around them. The sky does not rage against the storm. It simply allows it to pass. And yet we, humans, with all our intelligence and wisdom, fight against the very nature of life itself. I started seeing hardship differently. It wasn't an attack on me. It wasn't something I needed to be saved from. It was simply part of being alive. The more I accepted this, the lighter I felt. The weight of expectation, that life should always be easy, that things should always go as planned, began to lift. And with that, I realized something extraordinary. The moment you stop believing that hardship is an injustice, it loses its power over you. A few months later, I met an old mentor, a man who had lived through far worse than I had. He had survived losses I couldn't fathom, had faced betrayals and failures that would break most people. Yet he sat across from me, calm, steady, unmoved by the storms he had weathered. "How do you do it?" I asked him. He smiled as if the answer was obvious. "You're acting like suffering is something that happens to you. But it's not. It's just life. The sooner you stop fighting it, the sooner you start living." It was the simplest truth, and yet the hardest to accept. Happiness does not come from escaping hardship. It comes from understanding that hardship is not something to escape. The world will take things from you. It will test you. It will throw storms your way without warning. But no storm lasts forever. No loss, no pain, no failure is permanent. The only thing that remains is you and how you choose to see it. So the next time life takes something from you, instead of asking, "Why me?" logically ask, "Why not me?" Instead of resisting, lean in. Instead of seeing hardship as a force that destroys, see it as the waves of the ocean, always moving, always changing, never meant to be held on to. Because when you truly accept that suffering is impermanent, but so is joy, you stop fearing the storms. You stop clinging to the past. You learn to stand, unshaken, as the world shifts around you, because you finally understand this is just life, and you were always meant to survive it. 2. Accept what you can't control and focus on what you can. There was a time in my life when I exhausted myself trying to control everything. I wanted people to think highly of me, so I obsessed over every word I said. I wanted life to go exactly as I had planned, so I stressed over every possible outcome. I wanted to rewrite the past, predict the future, and make sure nothing unexpected could ever shake me. But no matter how hard I tried, reality refused to obey. The harder I grasped for control, the more powerless I felt. Then, one day, I read a simple truth that changed everything. Some things are in our control and some things are not. Enchiridion, chapter 1. These words from Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher who lived nearly 2,000 years ago, hit me like a thunderbolt. He wasn't offering a complicated philosophy. He was revealing something obvious that I had ignored my entire life. Most of what I worried about was completely beyond my reach. Other people's opinions, unexpected setbacks, the past, the future. None of these were mine to control. And yet, I had been spending all my energy trying to change them. Think about your own life. How often do you stress over things that are not in your hands? Maybe it's how someone treated you unfairly. Maybe it's the economy, the job market, or the way people perceive you. Maybe it's something that happened years ago that still haunts you, or a future that feels uncertain. We like to believe that if we analyze, worry, and strategize enough, we can somehow force life to bend to our will. But the truth is, the world does not submit to our control. Imagine standing in the middle of a storm, trying to push back the wind with your bare hands. No matter how much you resist, the wind will not stop. You can curse it, fight it, exhaust yourself in battle, but it will not change. However, the moment you accept the wind, adjust your sails, and move with it instead of against it, you regain your power. I learned this lesson the hard way. I remember a time when someone I deeply cared about drifted away. No explanation, no closure, just distance. I spent weeks, maybe even months, trying to figure out what I had done wrong. I replayed every conversation, searching for the moment where I had made a mistake. I tried to fix it, to pull them back, to hold on to something that was already slipping through my fingers. But one day, after exhausting every possible attempt, I asked myself a different question. Am I trying to control something that isn't mine to control? And just like that, I saw it clearly. I could not control their actions, but I could control mine. I could choose to stop chasing, to stop searching for answers that would never come. I could choose to focus on what I had left, my peace, my growth, my ability to move forward. The moment I accepted this, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: freedom. Now, whenever I face uncertainty, I use a simple practice. I take a piece of paper and draw two columns. On one side, I write everything outside my control, other people's actions, the past, the economy, the weather. On the other side, I write everything within my control, my thoughts, my attitude, my choices, my actions. And then I make a decision. I will not waste another second fighting what I cannot change. Instead, I will give everything I have to what I can. Because here's the truth. If you try to control everything, you will always feel powerless. But if you focus only on what is yours to control, you will realize you were never powerless at all. The waves will rise and fall. The wind will shift without warning. The world will move on, indifferent to your plans. But you have power over one thing: yourself. And when you master that, no storm will ever break you. 3. Practicing gratitude, even in hard times. There was a moment in my life when I thought I had lost everything. A series of failures left me feeling like I had nothing to hold on to. I remember waking up one morning, staring at the ceiling and thinking, what is there to be grateful for? My mind, trapped in scarcity, could only see what was missing, what had been taken, what had fallen apart. It wasn't just sadness, it was emptiness. I believed that gratitude was something you felt when life was good, not something you could summon when life was crumbling. But I was wrong. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer not from the lack of things, but from the lack of gratitude for what we already have." Letters to Lucilius, Letter 2. That sentence changed everything for me. I had always thought that happiness came from acquiring more success, more love, more stability. But the truth is, happiness isn't found in getting more. It is found in appreciating what already exists. And if you wait for life to be perfect before you feel grateful, you will spend your entire existence chasing something just out of reach. I learned this lesson through an unexpected conversation. I was sitting with an old friend, someone who had been through more hardship than I could imagine. He had lost his job, his home, and at one point, even his health. And yet, as we sat together, he smiled. It wasn't a forced, hollow smile. It was genuine. Curious, I asked him, "How do you still find reasons to be happy?" He laughed softly and said, "Because I wake up every morning and remind myself that even now, even in this moment, life is giving me something. I just have to notice it." That night, I decided to try. Instead of focusing on what I had lost, I forced myself to look for what remained. I had a bed to sleep in. I had people who still cared about me. I had my mind, my ability to think, to learn, to grow. I had the opportunity to start again, and the more I looked, the more I saw. Gratitude, I realized, wasn't about denying hardship. It was about shifting focus. It was about recognizing that even in the darkest times, light still exists. Think about your own life. Right now, no matter what you are facing, there is something, however small, that is worth appreciating. Maybe it's the warmth of the sun on your face. Maybe it's the sound of laughter from a stranger passing by. Maybe it's simply the fact that you are still here, still breathing, still capable of moving forward. Gratitude doesn't erase pain, but it gives you the strength to endure it. I started a habit that I keep to this day. Every morning before I do anything else, I write down 3 things I am grateful for. At first it was difficult. My mind resisted, wanting to focus on problems, on stress, on uncertainty. But I forced myself to find something, anything. Some days my list was simple: a good cup of coffee, a song that made me smile, a message from a friend. Other days it was deeper: the ability to start over, the lessons I've learned through struggle, the fact that I have survived every difficult day so far. And something unexpected happened. The more I practiced gratitude, the lighter I felt. The challenges in my life didn't disappear, but my ability to handle them grew stronger. I stopped seeing hardship as something that defined me and started seeing it as just another piece of the journey. I realized that gratitude is not just an emotion, it is a skill, and like any skill, it requires practice. There will always be something missing, always something that could be better, something that could be easier. But if you spend your life waiting for the perfect moment to feel grateful, you will never feel it at all. The key is to stop postponing happiness. Stop telling yourself that you'll be grateful when life improves. Be grateful now, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. So here is my challenge for you. Right now, wherever you are, take a deep breath and think of 3 things you are grateful for. It doesn't matter how big or small they are. Just find them, hold on to them, write them down, and do this every day. Because no matter how difficult life gets, gratitude is always within reach. And when you choose to see it, you will find that even in the hardest moments, happiness is never truly gone. It was just waiting for you to notice it. 4. Living in the present moment. I once met a man who spent his entire life chasing happiness, but never caught it. He was always somewhere else, mentally, emotionally, never fully in the moment he was living. When he was at work, he longed for the weekend. When the weekend came, he worried about Monday. When he was with friends, he checked his phone, thinking about what he was missing elsewhere. And when he was alone, his mind was trapped in the past, replaying regrets or racing toward the future, consumed by anxiety over what was yet to come. One day, he told me something I'll never forget. I feel like I'm always running toward something, but I don't even know what it is. And when I get there, I realize I was happier chasing it than actually having it. It was a moment of realization, but also of deep sadness. He had spent his entire life chasing a version of happiness that didn't exist, because happiness is not in the past, and it's not in the future. It only exists here, now, in this moment. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Give yourself a gift, the present moment." Meditations, Book 12, Section 3. Yet this is the gift most of us refuse to open. We are haunted by memories, fixated on mistakes, trapped in cycles of what if and if only. At the same time, we are consumed by worries of what's ahead, believing that peace will come when we have more money, more time, more certainty. But the truth is, if you cannot find happiness now, you will not find it later. Look around you, right now. Feel the breath in your lungs. Notice the sensation of your feet against the ground. Listen to the sounds around you. This is life, happening in real time, but how often do we miss it? How often do we live as if today is merely a stepping stone to something more important, something bigger, something better? We postpone joy, thinking it belongs to the future, but when the future arrives, we only push it further away. I once spoke to an elderly man who had lived through war, hardship, and the loss of people he loved. He told me, if I could go back in time, I wouldn't change a single thing. I would just pay more attention. I would listen more. I would watch the sunset without thinking about tomorrow. I would hold my wife's hand and not let my mind drift away. But I spent too much of my life looking forward, and now I wish I had just stopped and looked around. His words struck me. We don't realize how much time we waste until we run out of it. The mind is a restless thing. It pulls us forward into uncertainty or drags us backward into regret. But neither of these places are real. The past is a story already written. It cannot be changed, no matter how many times you replay it. The future is a page not yet filled. It will unfold as it will, whether you worry about it or not. But the present is the only place where life actually happens. The only moment you truly own is this one. I used to believe that overthinking was a form of preparation, that if I analyzed every possibility, I could protect myself from failure, from regret. But all it did was rob me of peace. I was so busy preparing for the worst that I failed to enjoy the best. The breakthrough came when I started practicing something simple. Whenever I caught myself lost in thought about the past or the future, I stopped. I took a deep breath. I looked around. I asked myself, what is happening right now? And in that moment, everything slowed down. My food tasted better. Conversations felt deeper. Even the smallest things, the warmth of the sun, the feeling of laughter, the quiet moments between sentences, became clearer. The practice of being present is not difficult, but it requires commitment. When you eat. Don't scroll mindlessly through your phone. When you talk to someone, truly listen. Don't just wait for your turn to speak. When you walk, notice the ground beneath your feet instead of being lost in thought. And when your mind begins to drift into worry or regret, gently bring it back, like a kite returning to the sky. Life is happening now, not tomorrow, not yesterday, right now. So stop chasing happiness like it's some distant prize. It's already here. The only question is, will you pause long enough to see it? 5. Turning hardship into an opportunity for growth. I once knew a man who, by every external measure, had failed. His business collapsed. His marriage fell apart. His friends distanced themselves. One by one, the things he had built, the things he believed defined him, disappeared. He was left with nothing but himself. For months, he lived in a haze of regret, replaying every mistake, every wrong turn. He saw his failures as a stain on his life, as evidence that he wasn't good enough. But one day, after yet another sleepless night, he sat down, exhausted, and asked himself a simple question. What if this isn't the end? What if this is training? Most people see hardship as an interruption, a cruel detour from the life they were meant to live. But the Stoics understood something deeper. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Meditations, Book 5, Section 20. In other words, the very thing that blocks your path is your path. The challenges you fear, the failures you wish to erase, the struggles you want to avoid, these are the raw materials of strength, wisdom, and resilience. The man I knew began to see things differently. Instead of drowning in self-pity, he asked himself, what is this teaching me? His failed business? A lesson in adaptability? His broken marriage? A lesson in self-awareness? His isolation? A lesson in independence? The things he once thought were destroying him were, in fact, reshaping him. Think about the hardest moment of your life. The moment you thought you wouldn't survive. Maybe it was heartbreak. Maybe it was failure. Maybe it was loss so deep that you didn't recognize yourself anymore. And yet, you survived. You are here, and whether you realize it or not, you are stronger because of it. The pain you endured has already changed you. The question is, will you let it shape you into someone greater, or will you waste it? We spend so much time resisting hardship, running from failure, avoiding discomfort. We want growth without struggle, wisdom without mistakes, strength without resistance. But nature doesn't work that way. A blade is not sharpened without friction. A tree does not grow strong without wind. A warrior is not made in times of peace. If you want to be unshakable, you must first be shaken. The world will test you. That is inevitable. People will betray you. Plans will fall apart. Unexpected losses will come. You cannot control that. But you can control how you see it. Every difficulty is a choice. Is this going to break me or build me? The next time life throws an obstacle in your path, do not ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Ask instead, "How can I use this?" Every struggle carries a lesson. A lost job might teach you perseverance. A broken relationship might teach you emotional strength. A personal failure might teach you discipline. If you learn to see hardship as training, nothing in life will ever be wasted. The man I told you about at the beginning of this story, he rebuilt himself. Not in the way he expected, not in the way he originally wanted, but in a way that made him stronger than ever before. His failures did not destroy him, they created him. The fire that melts the weak also forges the strong. Which one will you choose to be? 6. Living with virtue, not chasing desires. There will be moments in life when everything seems to be falling apart. You lose what you thought was secure. You face rejection, failure, disappointment. In these moments, most people desperately reach for something external to numb the pain. Pleasure, distractions, material possessions. They believe that if they can just have more, they will feel better. But no amount of wealth, no temporary comfort, no fleeting pleasure can truly fill the void created by suffering. The Stoics knew this well. Epictetus once said, "We cannot control what happens to us, but we can control how we live." Discourses, Book 1, Chapter 1. In hardship, you always have a choice. Let suffering break you, or let it shape you into someone stronger. And the way you make that choice is through virtue. I once met a man who had lost everything: his business, his marriage, his sense of identity. In his darkest moments, he tried to escape through drinking, through chasing empty pleasures, through blaming the world for his suffering. But none of it worked. Every morning, he woke up feeling worse than the day before. One day, exhausted and numb, he made a different choice. Instead of running from his pain, he faced it. Instead of seeking distractions, he sought discipline. Instead of trying to escape hardship, he used it to become better. He began practicing honesty, not just with others, but with himself. He admitted his mistakes, took full responsibility, and committed to living with integrity. He developed patience, understanding that rebuilding himself would take time, and that he had to endure without giving in to self-pity. He strengthened his discipline, waking up early, taking care of his body, staying consistent in his work, even when it felt meaningless. And through all of this, something changed. His suffering didn't disappear, but it transformed into something powerful. He became unshakable. Most people believe that happiness comes from acquiring things, money, status, recognition, but true happiness comes from becoming someone you respect. When life tests you, When hardship strikes, the only thing that will hold you together is your character. If you chase pleasure, you will always be at the mercy of external forces. But if you build yourself on virtue, on courage, patience, integrity, and self-discipline, then nothing can take your happiness away. Think about a time when you faced real difficulty. Did you try to run from it? Did you look for quick fixes, temporary escapes? Or did you use it as an opportunity to grow? The greatest people in history did not become great through comfort. They became great through struggle, through discipline, through choosing virtue over impulse. So how do you put this into practice? When you are struggling, stop chasing distractions. Instead, ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to be in this moment? Choose honesty when it's easier to lie. Choose patience when frustration rises. Choose self-control when temptation calls. These small choices, made consistently, will turn suffering into strength. The world will always be uncertain. Hardship will come and go. But when you build your happiness on virtue rather than desire, you become untouchable. Not because life spares you from suffering, but because you no longer depend on anything outside yourself to feel whole. 7. Cultivating positive relationships. There are moments in life when everything feels unbearable, when the weight of loss, failure, or uncertainty makes even the smallest steps forward seem impossible. In those moments, it's easy to believe that happiness is out of reach, that the struggle is yours to bear alone. But what if I told you that the greatest source of strength in hardship is not found in isolation, but in the people you choose to surround yourself with? Seneca once wrote, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you." Letters to Lucilius, Letter 11. The Stoics understood something that modern life often makes us forget. We are not meant to endure life's challenges alone. True resilience is not about suffering in silence, but about recognizing that the right relationships can serve as an anchor when everything else feels uncertain. I once met a man who had been through unimaginable hardship. He had lost his job, his home, and even his sense of identity. For months, he withdrew from the world, convinced that no one could understand his pain. He spent his days replaying regrets, isolating himself further, believing that struggling alone was a sign of strength. But as time passed, the loneliness only deepened his despair. One evening, after months of self-imposed solitude, he reached out to an old friend, not for advice, not for solutions, but simply to talk. That single conversation was a turning point. His friend didn't try to fix everything. He didn't dismiss his pain with empty encouragement. He simply listened. He reminded him that no matter how much life had taken from him, he was not alone. And for the first time in months, the man felt something shift inside him. His circumstances hadn't changed, but his burden felt lighter. This is the quiet power of connection. A single conversation, a moment of genuine understanding, can be enough to pull someone back from the edge. It doesn't erase hardship, but it makes it bearable. And yet, when we struggle, our instinct is often to retreat, to shut people out, to convince ourselves that no one will understand. But that isolation only amplifies our suffering. Happiness, even in difficult times, is not found in pretending to be strong alone. It is found in choosing to share the weight of your struggles with those who truly see you. So how do you cultivate relationships that sustain you through hardship? First, be mindful of who you let into your inner circle. Not all relationships are created equal. Some people uplift you, while others drain you. Pay attention to how you feel after spending time with someone. Do you leave feeling encouraged, grounded, understood? Or do you feel exhausted, anxious, or small? When life is hard, the people around you should be a source of strength, not another battle you have to fight. Second, allow yourself to be vulnerable. Many people mistake vulnerability for weakness, but in reality, it is one of the greatest forms of courage. Being open about your struggles doesn't make you less strong, it makes you human. The right people will not see your pain as a burden. They will see it as an opportunity to stand beside you. Third, be the kind of person you want to have in your life. If you want loyalty, be loyal. If you want understanding, be understanding. If you want encouragement, offer it freely. The most meaningful relationships are built not on what we take, but on what we give. And in giving, we often receive far more than we expect. There is an old saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Life's greatest storms are not meant to be faced in solitude. No matter how independent you are, no matter how strong you believe yourself to be, there will come a moment when you need someone to remind you that you are not alone. And when that moment comes, the relationships you have nurtured will be the foundation that keeps you standing. So if you are struggling right now, I encourage you to do one thing. Reach out. It doesn't have to be dramatic. A simple message, a quiet conversation, a moment of honesty. Let someone in, because happiness, even in hardship, is not something you must create alone. It is something that grows in the spaces between us, in the quiet understanding of another soul who says, I see you, I am here. You don't have to carry this alone. Happiness isn't about waiting for life to be easy. It's about learning to thrive, even when life is hard. Through these 7 Stoic principles, we've uncovered a truth that most people spend their entire lives ignoring. Suffering is inevitable, but how we respond to it is our choice. You have the power to accept what you cannot control, to find gratitude in the darkest moments, to transform obstacles into opportunities, to live with integrity, and to surround yourself with people who strengthen you. True happiness isn't found in avoiding hardship. It is found in becoming the kind of person who can endure it with grace, with resilience, and with purpose. Now, I want to hear from you. Which of these lessons spoke to you the most? Have you ever faced a challenge that forced you to grow? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this video gave you value, if it made you think, if it helped you see hardship in a new light, hit the like button, share it with someone who needs to hear this message, and subscribe for more Stoic wisdom to help you navigate life's challenges. The path to happiness isn't something we find by chance. It's something we build, choice by choice, day by day. As you leave this video, remember the words of Marcus Aurelius. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Meditations, Book 6, Section 8. So the question is, will you take control of your mind, or will you let life control you? The choice is yours. See you in the next video.